Welcome to the Cars and Coffee Podcast. Our guest today is Simon Groneberg. He is a seasoned professional whose career has been deeply intertwined with the high-octane world of motorsports. He has worked close with various motorsports teams, bringing a unique creative perspective to the track. He has collaborated with drivers, contributing to their professional branding and media presence. Currently, Simon is leveraging that experience in a new arena, working for a software company that proudly sponsors Formula One teams, continuing the passion for speed and innovation in a different capacity. All right, man. I appreciate you coming out today.
Thank you for having me.
So this is episode 1. So I think it's very interesting. I get to work, have a conversation with someone that works on an AMG F1 team. So you want to talk about that experience versus maybe experience working in Le Mans?
Sure. So yeah, basically, my part in motorsports is for the most time was working in with drivers to do their brand development, their video blogs, and so on. For example, here we have one of the Aston Martin drivers I worked with for almost a decade now. And yeah, that's pretty much fun. I'm a big car enthusiast. That's like my only qualification to talk about this topic. And now in my let's call it 9 to 5 life, I work at a software company that sponsors the F1 team. And through that, I sometimes can take a little view behind the scenes, learn how the F1 team operates, and how basically F1 is a classic motorsport, but with a very much bigger budget and very big theater. I think F1 for sure is a big theater, and everything that happens on the Nürburgring is like the purest version of that for sure.
What's interesting to me is like F1 is a lot of theater, but it's also it gives me the European NASCAR vibe, because you can go to these tracks and there's like a dirt ring where you can watch the tracks. Because when you watch F1 races, like in the States, you see these big grandstands, where it's like you think it's like these are like $1,000 seats, but in Europe you can buy like these little like these dirt side seats where there's like no tables, no benches, no place to sit. You just stand, and you can watch the races for like $35.
Yes, but maybe not in F1, because they're like under 500 euro. You're not gonna make it on track, at least not in the European ones. But for the Nürburgring 24-hour race, a few years back, a ticket was like $30 for the entire 24-hour race, and you could more or less go wherever you wanted during that time. So that was pretty cool.
So what's your opinion? Because you've grown up watching the races here in Europe. Do you prefer F1 or do you prefer Le Mans? What racing series do you actually enjoy? Is it the engineering standpoint of Le Mans, is everyone's trying to do something different? Or do you enjoy F1 more because of the historical standpoint?
I think F1 is like the one popular sport that you can enjoy with the widest group of people, like colleagues and friends and so on. And I love endurance racing a little bit more, just because it's F1 performance. When you look at the LMP1 prototypes from a few years back, But these things run not only the 24 hours of the race, but also the warm up, the qualifying, and so on, right, on the same engine. So they are covering around, what was it, 30,000 kilometers on a weekend. I might be completely wrong with that.
We'll have to convert that.
Some obscene amount of miles in a short time, and what it takes physically to race around the clock like that on the top level where every second counts. You have to deal with nutrition, even for the mechanics, right? They need to have the breaks, they need to eat, but also they need to be ready 24 hours, and they can't mess up a single pit stop. After like 23 hours, if you come in for the last pit stop, you need to be at a performance level like you did when you were at the beginning of the race. So the human component on track and off track is a little bit more interesting, but of course the theater of F1 is also something I really enjoy for sure. It's just the more mainstream F1 is the mainstream thing, but that doesn't disqualify the engineering and the efforts of the teams that are at play there.
It's really cool to see Aston Martin back in F1. It's, when did they quite get back in F1? Do you know, or?
It must have been 21, 22, somewhat around there. They kind of sacrificed the Le Mans program for that, and the endurance racing program, to have the funds available to join F1. And I know that Mr. Stroll is he's doing nothing to just be there and be part of it, right? He is playing to win. You see that with the hire of Adrian Newey. That there's big ambitions, and it has been a while. So they were last time in the 50s or something in F1.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and recently I've heard that Jaguar is going to sell, or they're looking at selling to a company in Saudi Arabia, I believe. Do you know anything about this, or?
Well, Jaguar is an interesting topic, right? Because there's arguably very few brands in the world that have their type of heritage.
Mm-hmm.
There's few brands that have cars that stood the test of time, like the old school 50s, 60s Jaguars that are still timeless marvels of design and engineering, and now they're kind of the laughing stock on the internet right now with their attempts to copy nothing, and it's interesting for sure.
I have a 66 E-Type, and I have not had any interest in the Jaguar brand for the past 20 years, because I felt like they did not know where they wanted to go as a car brand.
Yeah.
And now they're not selling cars, but doing this really interesting commercial advertising and, marketing a vehicle that looks like a Lego brick.
Yeah.
And that is, it looks like it copies like a Bentley and an R35 GTR from certain perspectives. And
would throw in Rolls-Royce there too.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Not a Bentley, but yeah, it looks like a Rolls-Royce, but it looks like what is that Chinese knockoff of Amazon?
Temu.
It looks like Temu Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
And it will probably function like a good old Temu Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, I hope they're trolling us. This is like my stages of grief, right? This is the bargaining stage where I'm like, I hope really they are just messing with us.
I'm hoping they're like, hey, everyone's talking about our car brand now. Reverse Uno card. What we're going to drop is a new E-Type Mark IV.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the series they'd be on, and we're going to do V8 powered sedans, and then also we'll have this hybrid super luxury car, or full electric. Because from an American consumer, Americans still really love their gas powered sports cars and sedans, and there's a place for like electrics, but I don't think we're quite there in the States for full electrics, and I don't know what Jaguar's thinking with this direction, because it's almost stalled in the US with electric consumption. And a lot of people that buy electric vehicles, myself included, only bought a vehicle because there was a $7,500 tax credit on it. It's like, take that away. It's like, I'm just going to keep my gas powered vehicle and enjoy that.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting point in automotive industry where there is a lot of brands that committed to an all-electric strategy. And then they released products that weren't entirely ready. Now I think we're at the point where ICE cars, I'm just talking everyday cars, I'm not talking like the 911s and McLarens out there, are matching the regular gas car range and so on. So that is cool. But they did too many mistakes in the beginning, and now it's not sexy anymore. Now it's like sexy to stick to all things. Again, commuter cars are not the enthusiast vehicles that we all love. Everything under 8 cylinders is communism for me, and before I do that, I rather drive electric. But yeah, long story short, I think Jaguar has entirely miscalculated even their ad. If they would have done that in the 70s, that would have been brave.
That would, at least the advertising, like the commercial, would make sense for everyone on LSD.
Yeah.
Because that looks like an like I'm tripping out on LSD 70s commercial.
Yes.
That doesn't work for today. And then, as a Jaguar owner, the logo redesign is probably the worst thing. They took it's like they took a legendary logo. And every company always refreshes it. Like Porsche's done it, BMW's done it, but they've always kept the original nuance. Yeah. And it's just like this.
Could you imagine Ferrari killing the horse and just putting like an F?
The
serif.
They're just gonna save money and start using the Ford Mustang logo.
Yeah.
But it still at least would be a horse, I guess. But I don't know. It's I think the one issue with Jaguar too is they're not making an SUV too. Like Americans love their SUVs, and they don't have. I can't think of an SUV that they were making in the past 2 years. Maybe the F-Pace, if that's a crossover. I think.
Yeah, the SUVs have been selling for Jaguar standards pretty well. But I think they need to go back to the drawing board and hire some people that actually care about the brand and are qualified to elevate it.
Yeah.
No one will be mad if they say, well, that didn't work. Let's try again. But if they pull through it, then I guess the value of your Jaguar will increase, because then that's a long gone brand that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So the nostalgia is probably gonna be valued a little bit more than it does now. But it's
they have to be strategic on what they do, and some car companies are being really smart, like Aston Martin. They still design a beautiful car, but then they partner with AMG for their powertrain, which is brilliant because it reduces their cost of, I'd imagine, to develop a powertrain is drastically expensive. So if you take a partner's powertrain, it's why Toyota was able to do the new Supra. They just took the BMW platform. I would think if Jaguar is going to do a V8 powered sedan, they would probably want to partner with something like Mercedes, or it'd be cool if they used the Chevy Z06 engine and put that in their cars. I mean, if they did something like that, I think that would really help their brand.
Yeah.
And then also just being Jaguar again, because their last, even in the 2010s, their cars were kind of like mid. The F-Type is, I think it's the first gen of the F-Type was a beautiful looking car.
Beautiful sounding too.
Yeah, and it's both the V6 and the V8 sounded great. It just had wasn't the best known for reliability. And then the redesign was kind of, I didn't quite like the redesign of it. But those are really cool cars, and people seem to be really happy with them, the people I've met with them. I really hope the brand turns itself around. And there's been some really cool, you've seen the concept car, and there's been some renderings by independent artists that make the car look phenomenal. And I think we should post that up later on. But they just look like classic Jaguar, but it looks like it's a new direction, and it's full, electric. And I think they're really just missing the mark.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Aston Martin. They have limited series vintage muscle cars that they are releasing every now and then.
Like V12 manual transmission, and those cars sell out in a matter of
But with the design language of their 70s cars. I don't know exactly the product name of it, but everyone is absolute crazy about the boxiness, but they're doing the boxiness in the right way because it's like it looks like a classic muscle car, like that gets people going. It doesn't try to be like a 70s science fiction in design language, but it's like goes back to the roots and enhances the things that make these cars so characteristic.
Yeah, these companies that are successful understand their customers.
Yeah.
Toyota understands making reliable cars is
Yeah.
why customers return to them. Porsche makes 911s and sports cars because that's what gets people in the door to buy their sedans.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jaguar understands their customers.
No.
Even if you look at Rivian Automotive, a fairly new company, they understand their customers. And when you talk to their sales reps, people are bringing in Teslas and Tacomas because what they did was brilliant. They advertised the outdoors person that wanted an outdoors lifestyle vehicle. They're basically the Lululemon of off-road vehicles that are electric. And they understand their customer and they are being successful at it. I don't think Jaguar knows who their customer is anymore. I think they're trying to pivot to a new customer that's not probably going to be there because the customer that wants that kind of customer they're trying to sell to or advertise to is in their 20s and can't justify $100,000 luxury car.
Absolutely. And if you look into something not related to the car industry but into video games, the franchise Halo, when they did the latest version called Halo Infinite, they hired a lot of people on purpose, that was in the job descriptions, that didn't like the game because they wanted to win new audiences, which means it didn't feel, still doesn't like everyone has childhood memories playing. It's like a Call of Duty-ish kind of experience now, and it completely lost its DNA and player base. And this is something that's gonna happen to car companies too, when they pivot too far away from the people that, against all reasonable human behavior, still kept buying Jaguars over the years. Then who is? Because everyone didn't buy them in the numbers that they would buy a 5 Series when we talk about the station wagons, when we talk about sedans, maybe a C-Class or E-Class sells in larger numbers. And from the performance numbers and the design is always a hot topic, but arguably a German sedan is probably the better decision to buy than what Jaguar was offering in the last couple of years.
Well, what I really think too with the German sedans, right? Used ones don't. Some of them don't hold their value really well, and so what happens is younger kids pick them up, like their E30s and E46s when they were 10 years old. And what happens then is you have a young person that comes to really enjoy BMW or Mercedes with their V8s, and it's like, when I have money, I'm going to buy that brand new car because like I had one, and it's like there's an emotional attachment with it, especially from gear heads. Whereas like Jaguar doesn't have any cars like that. No one's like, I'm going to go chase down a 90s, XJ, 8, I guess what it is technically. Maybe an older, like someone that's older, a boomer would do that because like, hey, they had a Jaguar back in the day or something like that.
But it's like the Corvette crowd. I think the Jaguar buyers are the Corvette crowd of Europe, right? It's like people had really cool sports cars in their youth. And then all the boomers now keep buying the Corvettes because, they feel so attached to their memories.
Right. Yeah. It's that. And so I don't think there's nothing that wants, as an E-Type owner, there's nothing that wants me to bring me back to the brand. And that's, I think there's a big market for that. Like if you have people that like, whether they had some terrible generation of the car or like, a car that was enjoyable, like an ME46 M3, and you had that car and it was phenomenal, you want to get another car. There's nothing with Jaguar in the past 30 years that makes you want to come back.
Exactly.
I think the E-Type is a brilliant, gorgeous looking car, and it's a marvel of its time. But there's nothing in that of today. The company that's doing that now is essentially Porsche, and Porsche seems like they're kind of making a mistake with this whole EV Boxster. Just looking at the forums on people that are into the Boxster platform. people really like it because it's the lightweight Porsche
Yeah.
affordable sports
I
car.
call it the hairdresser's Porsche because even when you're like a hairdresser and you run your own business, that's the Porsche you can afford to get, right? It's the possible Porsche for everyone to achieve at some point.
Yeah, there's so many trims of it. There's the entry level 300 horsepower
Yeah.
car, and then you have the GT4 RS and Spider RS cars, and it's such a wide range of people they serve, and it's just uh, such a wonderful sports car.
Yeah.
It's light, it's engaging, it's fairly affordable to a larger percentage of people than the 911 GT3s or 911s as a whole. And the fact that Porsche is like, let's make this electric, I think is kind of a mistake because you have people that can finally afford these cars and they've had maybe the older generation Boxsters or 911s, and they can afford a $130,000 like true sports car, but now they're going to be pigeonholed into like, well, the only 911 you can only buy a 911 now that is, maybe a manual transmission. It's hybrid.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a true lightweight sports car from Porsche anymore because I think the GT3 is still lightweight, but you look at the Carrera, the Carrera S, the Turbo, they're all pushing 3,400 pounds.
But that's because people demand constant like features for like ventilated seats and all of the conveniences that you want to have nowadays. And then they want cozy leather seats instead of carbon bucket seats because groceries and bucket seats is maybe not convenient. But I think Porsche, I agree on the Boxster thing, but I do believe there is a space for electric Porsche sports cars. Because Porsche has the first electric car in the world was a Porsche. So they have, you can go to Zuffenhausen, they have it like in the first floor in the museum there. So if any brand has the heritage and the claim for sporty electric or hybrids, it's definitely Porsche with the Le Mans programs and so on.
I agree with that. I think they are the only brand that right now could truly pull that off.
Yeah.
I think it is an incredible gamble though on a very popular selling platform.
Yeah.
It's a very tough choice they have to make, and it's being driven by like regulations and stuff like that set by government. So, which is sometimes annoying because you get these really fuel efficient cars that are incredibly unreliable because like the manufacturer's doing things like
too complex.
Yeah.
So I think if you see it, if I want to play devil's advocate and defend the Porsche strategy, which if you look at their sales numbers right now might not be working at the moment so much, but they're doing everything to protect and save the 911.
They are,
right. The emission regulations goes with like everything you produce can only have this and that much amount of emissions going out. And they are rather electrifying and ruining everything to protect the 911 and to be able to have the cash flow to develop cars like the GT3.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. Like that's the method they have to go down because the 911 will always be the car they protect.
Yeah.
Whether like some people agree it's the best sports car right now from Porsche.
Yeah.
It's the car they're going to protect, and they'll sacrifice everything else to keep that car alive because it's so important to their brand.
Yeah.
Without the 911, who's Porsche?
Yeah, and who's the car industry? Because that's the car that Ferrari buys to benchmark their development. That's the car everyone buys to see.
It's the benchmark. It's the benchmark, sports car or, grand touring car you can use every day.
Yeah.
And so it's very challenging for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 911 they have to protect. So I get it on the regulation standpoint that they have to kill it. It's just unfortunate because it is such a great sports car. Yeah.
But I heard some rumors that they are reconsidering and bringing back the ICE version of it to basically go down the BMW strategy to offer both.
I've heard that, and my understanding is it's because they can't get the weight quite down right in the range within reasonable numbers, which makes sense. Like a Boxster and Cayman is not much bigger than a Miata.
Yeah.
But these electric vehicles typically have 1,000-pound batteries.
Yeah.
And 1,000 or 2,000-pound batteries. where are you going to put it
Yeah.
in a car that small?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of engineering they have to figure out to make it right. And, maybe they might make the vehicle hybrid. That they
Like the GTS, the new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they could do a 4-liter hybrid motor.
Yeah.
Part of the issue with a full electric Cayman or Boxster is electrics are superior in their terms of their performance, raw performance. The last thing Porsche wants to do is make a Boxster that out of the box, the standard Boxster is faster than a 911 turbo because they made an all-wheel drive Boxster and now the 500 horsepower it just crushes a turbo on a track.
Yeah. But Porsche got EVs right in the first attempt, and I think they deserve all the credit for it because range is one thing, but to live with an EV, charging times, charging speeds matter. It was the first 800-volt architecture in mass production that BMW, Mercedes still haven't had a single vehicle on that architecture, and the sales numbers show that. That people buy BMWs because they know them, they're familiar with them, but no one really cares about the Mercedes, the EQ series. I hope it rots in hell as soon as possible. My grandfather worked for Mercedes-Benz. When he passed, Mercedes gave the biggest amount of flowers on his funeral. So I always have a soft spot for this brand, just of this grand gesture. But also they make great cars. But what they did with electrics is like they made it. I drove the EQS and it was an absolute shitbox. You couldn't pay me to drive this thing ever again. It's doesn't deserve the S lettering on it. It's just wrong. And the Taycan was such a incredible driving car.
It's a superior car. Yeah. You can look at the resale.
Different category, but just technology-wise, right? How it is to live with, it's much, much better.
The resale value is superior. You look at the EQ, like whatever that Mercedes is, and they're down like I think 60-70% in their value. They don't hold value, whatever.
I mean, the Taycan also crashed and burned, but that's for me like point to buy one.
I think part of the reason for the Taycan though is because Porsche is kind of like, hey, if you want a GT3 911, you have to buy a ton of cars. Well, fine, I'll buy a Taycan or buy 2 Taycans and sell those. And now the market is just oversaturated with Taycans because like they're trying to offload those cars. And maybe it's because of carbon footprint, right? They have to sell so many Taycans to sell one GT3. I don't know the reason for it, but it seems like that is the car that you have to buy so many of to get a GT3 allocation.
But I'm sure this will end because they're really struggling with selling cars. Like if you go to the Porsche dealerships, you find a lot of GT3, even GT3 RS or Dakar models that no one cares to purchase at the moment.
That is an interesting thing about here in Germany is like it's a shame because like they're not marked up like $100,000 in the States. Like you go to the States, a GT4 RS is 230 to 280,000 USD, but you can come here and you can find them all day long for about 160 euro.
Yeah.
And I think that's with tax included, right, in the sales price. Yeah. So like there's no additional cost, but that 230 to 270 in the States, that's before tax. Yeah. So it's going to be like, another $10,000, $20,000 in the States for that car. And the GT3s are the same way. They're like, they're selling for about 190 here.
Yeah.
But in the States, like a GT3 is like $260,000, and it's been consistent like that. Yeah. In the States, it's definitely an annoying problem. A lot of these people that buy these cars are not motorsports people. No. They're just trying to flip the car. And Porsche's reaction to it has been like, well, you have to buy so many cars.
Yeah.
It's Porsche's an interesting brand. And especially in the past 5 years with these cars getting super expensive. Because 5 years ago, you could have walked into a Porsche dealership, hey, can I get a GT3 RS? And they'd be like, here you go. Yeah. Now it's like, well, sir, have you bought 10 Taycans from us in the States?
It's a very expensive loyalty program, isn't it?
It is. I guess it's the dealerships that really are driving this thing, right? And I understand they have to make certain decisions for them to keep customers and to maximize their profits. Speaking of manufacturers that have made mistakes, Ferrari.
Oh no.
The
We're gonna
F80,
talk about the F80, aren't we?
the F80, yeah. It is. I don't think I've seen a car that is more unappealing to look at in a while, besides the Jaguar, besides the F80. And Ferrari used to make some of the most beautiful sports cars, like these supercars. Like the Enzo is gorgeous. The F50 looks beautiful in the right angles. The
Yeah,
F40, well, it's just legendary and it looks
yeah.
pure 80s. But the F80,
I
it sounds like a vacuum cleaner.
Yes. So here's the thing. Don't think that the design is the biggest problem. I just think they try to make like a modern day F40 with like the nuanced boxiness of it, but they half-assed it. Right? They didn't go all out and did the most Ferrari thing ever, which is go completely crazy. And so Ferrari said aerodynamics is for people that can't build engine. Now they can't build engines that excite people. It might be a great system, like Mercedes did it with Project One, right? But that was a real Formula One engine in there, something different.
Yeah, and I think when I think of the brands that are really nailing these super hypercars from their manufacturers is McLaren with their new one nailed it because it's a twin turbo V8.
But it looks boring.
It doesn't look great in my opinion. I still don't think it looks as good as a P1, but at least from the back of the car, it sounds phenomenal. I would rather listen to that car and than drive that car. But for those price points, the car I'd really want would be a Gordon Murray T50.
Absolutely, and
it's not chasing the pure power number that the Ferrari F80 is chasing. Like, and the people that can buy these cars are probably, I'd imagine they're just storing them in a garage. But from an enthusiast standpoint, the car I would rather buy would be
easy.
It would not be the F80. It'd be maybe an F40 or a vintage car that with a manual gearbox and a twin turbo V8 that screams like.
And the people that have that much money, they have options. It's not longer anymore that you only could buy either Lamborghini or Ferrari if you wanted to have an outrageous high performance vehicle, right? We have now Koenigsegg, we have all of the McLarens, even you can buy American, like if you want to go trashy, buy a Hennessy, like it's so much out there that you can spend millions on. Why would you go for a car that doesn't make you excited when you rev it and drive it fast? Like I saw the videos when they had the rollout on the racetrack, and it sounded like a tram passing by, not so much like a Ferrari.
And then that's unfortunate. Like, and you kind of see it with some of like the older Ferraris, like the 458 Italias. They've not gotten any cheaper.
No, like they didn't age.
They're aging really well. The interiors are aging really well, and the price point is like stuck at 190 to 220,000, depending on like the year and mileage. They have not moved. That seems like a car. It's going to be a great investment platform because the 488s aren't even doing as well as those. And then as we move up the trim line and the generation, it's getting less and less. The Ferraris are becoming more and more boring.
Yeah, but the Daytona, I think, is a stunner. I've seen one in the wild recently.
I'm drawing a blank on the Daytona.
Look it up. It's, I think, P3 Daytona or something. I'm not exactly sure. It's brand new.
P80? P80?
No, it's a single digit. Just type in 2020 for Ferrari Daytona. It reminds me a lot of
P3. It's SP3.
Yeah. It looks a lot like the Testarossa with the lines and so on.
That looks cool. Yeah.
It's an absolute spectacular jaw-dropping thing. If that thing drives past you 200 miles an hour, you will not forget that.
No, it has great lines. Like that is a beautiful. I guess at the time that was their supercar.
It's brand new. Like
it's brand new. Yeah. It looks modern, and that looks great.
Yeah. That should be the Halo car. Put like a V10, V12 into that thing, and then
I think that's what people really miss.
I don't even know what the powertrain is, but this should be the Halo car.
I think that's what people really miss with some of these like modern day Ferraris. Because from my understanding, that modern day Ferraris aren't selling really well. I think that's what people really miss. Like, yeah, I mean the twin turbo V6 hybrid car is faster than the 458 Italia. but part of it's emotion. Like that a motorsports enthusiast car doesn't have to be fast. It has to give you an emotional
Drama.
response, and it has to give you the drama.
Yeah.
And I think that's why maybe Miatas are so fun. Like, if you've ever driven a Miata on track, it's like you're going balls out and you're going super fast, you think, and you're going slow, but you're just having the best time of your life because you have all this drama of like sliding around a 2,000-pound car.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd probably rather do that than listen to a vacuum cleaner.
For sure. I think when it comes to the conversation, electric versus ICE, as an everyday car, ICE are perfectly fine. They're well more equipped to do some mall crawling with them than the inline six powered Porsches in the world. They still can do that, but just from a rational, detached from emotion point of view, they're fine. They get the job done.
Yeah.
But we don't need to ruin the cars that we use as vacation from the fine, perfectly convenient everyday thing, right? This is our escape or refuge, or the weekend car, basically. But yeah, maybe regulation changes. I don't think e-fuels are the answer, but also we can be a little bit more rational and not trying to replace platforms that have been established and developed for many decades.
Yeah.
Because replacing every car and producing new platforms completely is also not more sustainable. Once the lithium is out of the earth, you can recycle it many times. That's not a problem. But
new cars are terrible for the environment.
Yeah.
If you're a true environmentalist, you would buy an old Ferrari because you'll never drive it.
No.
And just keep it in the garage.
Yeah, and you walk.
Yeah, the carbon footprint's already been made by the car, so you'd buy that. That's if you want to save the world, and then ride a bike everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think these trends of like you have to buy new to save the planet is something that people miscalculate because older cars are the carbon footprint's already been generated to make that old car. You probably don't want to drive a Humvee around, but if you have an old Prius, probably keep the old Prius. Versus, let me go buy a brand new Prius that gets 3% better MPG, or buy an electric car. Because I think at some point we got to figure out how we're going to do electric cars. I don't think we're to the point to sustainability with them yet. Because in the U.S. we're still using, I think it's 88% of our energy comes from coal still. We're not using sustainable power. We're doing nuclear fission. Make way more sense. And then, at some point, there's an issue, from my understanding, with how much copper we can mine. Electric motors take a lot of copper. And so we have to figure out how we're going to make these vehicles sustainable and better for the world. Because lithium comes out of some pretty negative places in the world. And
just like Jaguars.
Yeah. There's a lot of there's slave mines for lithium and so it's.
I mean, when you produce at scale, you cannot afford to run things on slave labor. So that might be actually a good thing. And other devices, laptops, smartphones, produced in the billions.
We got to figure out, I think, how to get rid of some of these negative effects of electric cars. But I think at one point there is a very bright future for them. In the States, certain states make sense with electric cars more so than others. If you live in New York or Philadelphia, where you're stop and go traffic constantly, and it's a small state for the U.S., makes sense. But if you have an electric car in Texas, like where the state, Texas is the size of all of Europe, essentially, Western Europe. Like you can fit Germany, France, all the way to UK for the size of Texas. So an electric vehicle that can go 330 miles in Texas doesn't make a lot of sense if you do a lot of traveling, and especially if you tow. If you tow stuff, you're losing about 50% of your range towing a camper. So there's going to be some development for that. I do think you brought it up. The synthetic fuels, that Porsche or renewable fuel that seems like a really great promise, because the neat thing about that is it's carbon neutral. It's pulling carbon from the atmosphere. They're adding I don't know what mineral or compound they're adding to turn it back into gasoline. But the neat thing about it is if you can bring it to scale, you can use existing gas stations.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a really cool potential, like carbon neutral concept.
The question is, how much energy do you need to produce a certain amount of what gets you moving in the car? And
Yeah.
when you want to break the car conversation down on just Excel sheet, you can put solar panels on your roof and put it directly into your car, while there's an entire supply chain connected to gas manufacturing, diesel manufacturing, e-fuel manufacturing. That's a conversation that needs to be honest, and whoever makes the laws that define how mobility is going to look in the future, I think it would help to also see, can we use the existing infrastructure?
Yeah.
Or can we not use them anymore?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I guess the last topic I want to kind of bring up, and then we're talking about it, right, is like the energy density of fossil fuels is really dense, right? Electric cars are really energy efficient. But in Germany recently, like if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, is Germany is trying to pass a law where like farmers have to use electric tractors, right? Or trying to move towards electric farm equipment. And when you're trying to do heavy workloads, it's just that is like we're not quite there from a energy density standpoint of doing a lot of loads.
And also, where are tractors? They're not in the cities. They're far out, sometimes very far out from any hypercharging infrastructure. I can imagine that there's other things in farming that should be addressed than the tractors, because these things are ridiculously expensive. Like, you can put a Lamborghini next to a tractor, and the Lamborghini is the cheaper car of both.
Yeah, it negatively affects I think there needs to, like you said, there needs to be an honest conversation about how this is going with regulation and how this can potentially negatively affect consumers and the cost of living, because that's what it really comes down to is like there's people that can afford the haves and have-nots, and we need to try to make it sustainable for everyone. We just can't be forcing. You need to go electric. The industry needs to be electric, and then make things are so expensive because of regulation that the mom that works 2 jobs to provide for her kids cannot afford to do that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
What's your plans for the rest of the day?
Not much really.
Oh.
It's Sunday, fun day. I'm probably gonna play some Xbox, go for a little hike, cook something. Had so much things going on over the holidays that I'm quite happy to have no to-dos for the rest of the day.
I wish I had that free time. I got to do some schoolwork. So it was great having you on. And
thank you so much.
Catch you later.
Catch you later. Take care.
All right.